First impressions. There's really only so much information you can get when you first meet someone. As strangers pass me by, they're not going to think, wow, she looks like she struggles a lot with organic chemistry. Like, a lot. But she has memorized all of the lyrics to All Star by Smash Mouth and makes a fantastic creme brulee. Now, while it would be quite convenient to know all of this information from a glance, it would also be very scary. And because we don't know all of this information from a first glance and just meeting someone, we simply settle with appearances. And to be quite frank, I know the first thoughts people have about me as soon as they see me. She's Asian, with straight black hair and dark brown monolith eyes and a small nose. It's impossible not to recognize that I'm Asian. Research has found that by the age of 3, children become aware of the physical characteristics of race, and that by the age of 4, children become aware of the social construct of race and are able to identify which racial group they belong to. So at a very young age, I already knew how different I looked from everyone around me. Growing up in a predominantly white community, I felt ostracized by my Asian American identity. I looked different from all of my friends and family, or not my friends and family, but my friends and my teachers. And when you recognize that you look different from everyone else that you know, all that you want is to fit in. But how could I possibly fit in? Besides looking different from all of the people that I was surrounded by in my life, I looked different from the people I would see on TV. People like Barbie, Sailor Moon, Cinderella, Aurora, and many others. These were the characters I was exposed to as a child, and these were the characters I looked up to as a child. Notice how none of them look like me at all? Well, I noticed that too. These girls that I looked up to, that I wanted to be, looked nothing like me at all. At just 5 years old, I desired blue eyes and blonde hair, just like the girls I looked up to. I thought that there was something wrong with me because I looked different from all of them. After all, these characters were all known to be the best, the prettiest, just the kindest people that you could ever meet. Maybe there was something wrong with me because of the way that I looked. So at 5 years old, I wanted to throw away my boring black hair and my small brown monolith eyes. I wanted to throw away my Asian identity to become as white as possible. At just 5 years old, I already hated the way that I looked. At just 5 years old, I already hated who I was. My family didn't quite help in this self-perception either. They would pull at my nose at hopes that it'll grow taller in the future, or tell me to get double eyelid surgery to fix my monolith eyes when I got older. Tall nose and a big eyes were what my family considered beautiful. White features were what my family considered beautiful. Coming into middle school, I battled not only with a rejection of my own Asian identity, but with others' rejection of my Asian identity. While I struggled with accepting my Asian features, I was simultaneously being insulted because of my Asian features. Ching chong ping pong, do you sell any wontons? A line I heard daily from one of my classmates. They would pull at the sides of their eyes to mimic my own eyes. And they would ask me to open my eyes more and make fun of how flat my face was. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. I mean, what could I say? These features that they were making fun of, I couldn't deny that I didn't have them. So I simply stayed silent and accepted the blatant racism. And accepting racism was one of the worst mistakes I ever made. I began making fun of my own features and stereotypes. I would laugh along with my friends who made racist jokes about Asians and just play along. But something always felt a little off. Something always felt a little off whenever I would laugh at these jokes or agree with these jokes. Something inside me told me that it wasn't right. But what could I do about it? All I wanted to do was to fit in. And if I said anything about it, I'd be ruining the mood. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I didn't belong in my school or my country. When Tampa, Florida was never a good enough answer to where are you from? It was clear to me that people did not view me as an American. To them, I will always be seen as Asian. My identity as an Asian American will always be preceded by Asian and then followed by American. Coming into high school, this self-perception continued. Still ashamed of my Asian features and complacent with the blatant racism, I figured nothing would change. But by the junior year of my high school experience, for a summer reading assignment, I decided to read Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye is a story surrounding a young Black girl named Pecola living in a community full of racism, misogyny, a corrupted white beauty standard, and so much more. It's a difficult read because of how tragic Pecola's story is, but it has so many disturbing events, but I just couldn't put this book down. Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye with Pecola, she was consistently faced with so much rejection from her community. Her community full of Black people, people that she thought she belonged with, were constantly attacking her. She was met with bullying, harassment, violence, and so many more things by the people she thought she belonged with, people she considered to be her family and friends. And to Pecola, she felt that it was the color of her skin to blame for all of the hatred that she was facing. But in reality, it was the hatred that her community was holding for themselves. This community full of Black people that she thought she belonged with, that she should have belonged with, had so much self-hatred and internalized racism, and they projected it all on Pecola. To them, it was much easier to blame someone else for the injustices that they faced. And in this community full of internalized racism, Pecola was chosen as a scapegoat for their own self-contempt and suffered the consequences. Although it is a difficult story, there is truth to be found in Pecola's story that related so much to my own. Pecola's only desire was to have blue eyes, just like Shirley Temple, the white beauty icon of her generation. Shirley Temple, the girl who was beloved by everyone, and Pecola, the girl that was rejected by everyone. It was like looking into a mirror when I read about Pecola. We were two girls who didn't fit into the white beauty standard. two girls whose only desire was to have blue eyes, just for the sake of acceptance. Yet, rather than sinking into the feeling of pity and contempt for the cruelty of the world, I realized as I closed this book that it is easier to admit that the world is at fault for the way things are, but difficult to realize that you can create change. I realized that the world is cruel and difficult, but how is the world going to change if I didn't first change the way that I thought? How could I ask the world to accept me for who I am if I didn't first accept myself? What is wrong with being Asian American? What is wrong with being who I am? Asking myself these questions, I began to accept myself and my identity. I realized that I shouldn't be ashamed for being Asian American. I shouldn't be ashamed for not being born with blonde hair and blue eyes. And I shouldn't be ashamed for not being white. Unlearning the years of internalized racism and self-hatred was long and difficult, especially in the era of COVID-19. With the rise in Asian American hate crimes, when I would come into high school, I was told that it was my fault that a virus was being brought into this country. And hearing that was offensive and demoralizing, to say the least. But my journey of self-acceptance didn't end there. At the University of Florida, I found a student organization called the Asian American Student Union, otherwise known as AASU. This community was unlike any other I've been a part of. In AASU, people embraced their Asian American identity, held pride in it, and worked together to empower each other. ASU showed me the beauty in being Asian American and how to hold pride in my Asian features. Rather than struggle to find ways to belong, find ways to celebrate your uniqueness of your identity and your culture. ASU gave me a safe space where I didn't have to worry about being seen as exotic or anything else besides a normal being. For me, ASU truly allowed me to accept myself for who I am because I found people who accepted me for who I am. And I am here now to tell you that I do accept my Asian American identity. My story could have ended like Pocola, suffocating from internalized racism and self-hatred and obsessed with an impossible beauty standard. But that is not how my story ends. Because unlike Pocola, I found a place where I felt like I truly belonged. I found people who truly accepted for who I am, and in turn, truly began to accept myself. And in turn of truly beginning to accept myself, I realized that the world really doesn't have to be so cruel. To quote Toni Morrison, "Don't let anybody convince you that this is the way the world is and therefore must be. It must be the way it ought to be." Racism shouldn't be normalized. Hate shouldn't be normalized. This world where marginalized communities are consistently being faced with discrimination and prejudice, this is not the world that we should be living in. Don't accept this world. Realize that it is people who shape the world as it is. People like you and me. People who demand change. But changing the world starts off with accepting yourself. And accepting yourself and your identity can seem difficult and maybe even impossible. when you're faced with so much rejection from so many people. But I'm here to tell you that it is possible. It is possible to find beauty in your identity. After all, beauty is not found in just blonde hair and blue eyes. It's found in black hair and brown eyes as well. Thank you.